All right, so are you ready to dive into some incredible travel destinations for 2025?
Absolutely. I'm always up for a little armchair travel.
Well, get ready to be inspired because we're going through this list of top 10 places to visit. And let me tell you, it's got my wanderlust going strong.
Yeah, there are so many amazing places to see. Sometimes it's hard to know where to even start.
That's the truth. Choosing from so many options can be, well, a little overwhelming.
It really can. You can get stuck in that planning phase forever, just dreaming and never actually booking that ticket.
Analysis paralysis for sure. But that's what we're here for, to break it down and maybe even uncover some hidden gems along the way.
Right. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so let's start with some city escapes that caught my eye. Medellin, Colombia, and Lisbon, Portugal. What makes these cities stand out?
Well, Medellin is a fascinating story of urban transformation. It's gone from a pretty rough past to become like this vibrant hub of art and innovation and entrepreneurship. It's really interesting how they've used creativity and community initiatives to address some serious social challenges.
Yeah, I've heard about the Comuna 13 district. It was once considered like one of the most dangerous areas, and now it's like a center for street art and cultural expression. They even have cable cars running through it.
They do.
But I'm curious, what were some of the initiatives that drove this transformation?
Well, the community played a huge role in Comuna 13's transformation.
Okay.
It was a combo of government investment in infrastructure and social programs, and most importantly, the residents themselves taking ownership. They created art collectives, they started businesses, they worked together to make it safer and more vibrant.
Wow. It really sounds like a community effort.
Oh, absolutely. And those cable cars you mentioned, they weren't just for tourists. They provided crucial transportation links for residents and helped connect Comuna 13 to the rest of the city.
That's so cool. It sounds like they really tackled the issues from multiple angles, not just covering things up with a fresh coat of paint.
Exactly. It was a holistic approach.
Okay, and speaking of balancing the old and the new Lisbon, it seems to be doing a great job of holding on to its authentic charm while also embracing its growing popularity. How do they manage that?
It's a tricky balance, that's for sure.
Oh,
Lisbon has seen a huge surge in tourism in recent years, but they've been smart about preserving their heritage.
okay.
They've implemented stricter regulations on things like Airbnb rentals to prevent neighborhoods from becoming like overrun with tourists.
Mhm.
They've also invested in promoting sustainable tourism and encouraging visitors to explore beyond the typical tourist hotspots.
So it's not just about getting more tourists, it's about getting the right kind of tourists.
Right.
Those who want to experience Lisbon's unique culture and contribute to its economy in a sustainable way.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Now let's shift gears and talk about nature. This list includes the Scottish Highlands, the Canadian Rockies, and the Faroe Islands. Talk about variety.
Yeah, we've got rugged mountains, serene lochs, turquoise lakes, dramatic volcanic cliffs. There's something for every nature lover out there.
I love it. The Scottish Highlands in particular, they seem like the perfect place to embrace the idea of slow travel. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it's about slowing down, disconnecting from the digital world, and really immersing yourself in the surroundings. It's about enjoying the journey, not just rushing to the destination.
I love that.
In the Scottish Highlands, you could spend weeks hiking through the mountains, exploring castles, soaking up that peaceful atmosphere of the lochs.
It sounds incredibly peaceful. I have a friend who went to the Faroe Islands recently, and they described it as just magical. These tiny villages nestled between these towering cliffs with sheep roaming freely. It sounds like such a unique place.
The Faroe Islands are definitely unique, steeped in Viking history, and they have this culture that's been shaped by their remote location and harsh environment.
I see.
The people are incredibly resilient and self-sufficient, with a strong tradition of storytelling, music, and craftsmanship.
Wow, it sounds like the kind of place where you can really connect with nature and experience a way of life that's completely different from what most of us are used to.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we can't talk about breathtaking scenery without mentioning the Canadian Rockies. Those turquoise lakes and snow-capped peaks are just iconic.
Oh, yeah. The Canadian Rockies are a classic for a reason. They offer endless possibilities for exploration.
Okay.
Whether you're a seasoned hiker or just want to take in the views, there's something for everyone. Lake Louise and Moraine Lake are must-sees, but don't overlook places like Jasper or Banff National Parks. They're equally stunning.
So it's not just about seeing the most famous spots, it's about finding those hidden gems
Mhm.
that offer a more intimate experience.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of hidden gems, this list also highlights Slovenia. I'll admit I don't know much about it. What makes it so special?
Slovenia is often called the hidden gem of Europe. And for good reason. It has a bit of everything. The Julian Alps for hiking Lake Bled is stunning. Ljubljana, the capital, is charming. There are caves to explore. Plus, the food and wine are incredible, and it's much more affordable than a lot of other European destinations.
Okay, you had me at Fairy Tale Beauty. Lake Bled sounds incredible.
It is.
But is it all hype? Or does Slovenia really live up to its reputation?
It definitely lives up to the hype. I think what makes Slovenia so special is how much diversity it packs into a small area. You can go from the mountains to the Adriatic Sea in just a few hours.
Wow.
And because it's a relatively small country, you can experience a lot without spending hours and hours on the road.
That's a great point. It sounds like the perfect place for a shorter trip if you want to pack a lot in. Now let's move on to a place that's been on my bucket list forever, Botswana. I've always been fascinated by the Okavango Delta and its incredible wildlife.
The Okavango Delta is truly special.
But I'm also aware of the ethical concerns around wildlife tourism. How does Botswana approach that?
Well, Botswana is actually a leader in sustainable wildlife tourism. They've adopted this low-impact, high-value approach, which means they prioritize quality over quantity. They limit the number of tourists in sensitive areas and focus on providing authentic experiences that benefit both visitors and the local communities.
That's great to hear. But what does that look like in practice?
Well, for example, a lot of safari camps in Botswana are built with eco-friendly materials and operate on solar power. They employ local guides and staff, and they partner with conservation organizations to support research and habitat protection.
So it's not just about minimizing negative impacts, it's about making a positive contribution.
Exactly.
That's impressive. Okay, for our last destination, let's head back to an island paradise, the Azores. They're part of Portugal, but they seem to have a distinct vibe. What can travelers expect in these volcanic islands?
The Azores are a really unique blend of adventure and relaxation. Stunning volcanic landscapes, hot springs, whale watching, hiking, and amazing seafood. They have a very laid-back atmosphere.
You had me at hot springs.
Right.
But is it all about relaxation, or are there opportunities for more, like, active adventures, too?
Oh, absolutely. The Azores are a hiker's paradise. You can climb Mount Pico, the highest point in Portugal, or explore the forests and crater lakes on the other islands. You can even go canyoning or coast-steering if you're feeling adventurous.
Wow, that does sound incredible.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground, from bustling cities to remote islands, from cultural experiences to outdoor adventures. What would you say is the common thread that ties all of these destinations together?
I think what unites them is this sense of authenticity. These are places that offer genuine experiences. They're not just tourist traps. They're places where you can connect with local cultures, explore incredible landscapes, and make lasting memories.
I love that. So it's not just about ticking off boxes. It's about finding destinations that resonate with you on a deeper level.
Exactly. It's about finding places that make you feel alive, inspired, and connected to something bigger than yourself.
Well said. All right, we've explored these amazing destinations, but before we get carried away planning our dream trips, let's talk about some practical considerations and how to make sure we're traveling responsibly.
Right.
All right, so we've explored these incredible destinations, but before we get too carried away planning our dream trips, let's talk about some practical considerations. What are some things we should think about to make sure our trips go smoothly and responsibly?
Well, one of the most important is planning ahead, especially if you're traveling during peak season.
Right.
That means booking flights and accommodations well in advance. Remember, these are popular spots, so availability can be limited and prices tend to go up closer to your travel dates.
Great. I can see how booking early would be crucial for a place like the Canadian Rockies, especially if you're going for those prime summer months, when the hiking trails are open and the weather's at its best. But wouldn't they kind of limit your flexibility? What if you're someone who likes to travel more spontaneously?
It's all about finding a balance. You can definitely still be spontaneous, but it might mean being more flexible with your destinations or your dates.
Okay.
Maybe instead of focusing on the most popular spots in the Canadian Rockies, you consider exploring some of the lesser-known areas nearby. Or you could look into traveling during the shoulder seasons like spring or fall, when the crowds are smaller and the prices are often lower.
That's a great point. So it's all about weighing the pros and cons and figuring out what works best for your travel style. And speaking of being prepared, I know you're a big advocate for travel insurance. Why is it so important even for seasoned travelers?
Travel insurance is one of those things that you hope you never need, but it can be a lifesaver if the unexpected happens.
Yeah.
It can cover you for medical emergencies, lost luggage, trip cancellations,
Mm.
even natural disasters. You just never know what might happen when you're traveling, so having that peace of mind is invaluable.
Okay, I'm convinced travel insurance is going on my to-do list.
Mm,
But besides the practical things, we also need to think about the impact our travels have on the places we visit. You mentioned Botswana is a leader in sustainable tourism. What can we do as travelers to minimize our footprint and make sure we're contributing to the well-being of the places we visit?
that's a great question. It starts with being mindful of our choices and making an effort to travel responsibly. For example, when it comes to transportation, can you choose public transport or cycling instead of always relying on taxis or rental cars?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm picturing myself cycling through those charming villages in the Faroe Islands, breathing in the fresh air and taking in the scenery. Much more rewarding than being stuck in a car.
Exactly. And when you're choosing accommodation, look for eco-friendly hotels or guest houses that are really making an effort to be sustainable. You can usually find information about their environmental initiatives on their websites or just ask them directly.
Yeah, I've noticed more and more hotels are highlighting their sustainability efforts, which is great. It gives us travelers more power to choose businesses that are aligned with our values.
Absolutely. And don't forget about supporting local communities. Eat at local restaurants, shop from local artisans, and choose tour operators who are committed to ethical and sustainable practices.
Speaking of tour operators, how can we make sure we're choosing ones that are really prioritizing responsible tourism, especially for wildlife experiences like in Botswana? Are there certifications or labels we should look for?
Yeah, there are some good ones out there. Look for operators that are members of groups like the International Ecotourism Society or have certifications like the Global Sustainable Tourism Council recognition.
Okay,
These organizations have standards for things like minimizing environmental impact, respecting local cultures, and supporting conservation efforts.
that's helpful. I'll be keeping an eye out for those certifications when I'm planning my trips. So being a responsible traveler is about making conscious choices every step of the way. But it's also about more than that, isn't it? It's about engaging with the local culture in a respectful way.
Absolutely. It's about being a respectful visitor, learning about the customs and traditions, and interacting with people in a genuine and meaningful way. It's about being open to new experiences and leaving a positive impact on the places we visit.
I love that. So sustainable travel isn't just about checking boxes. It's about having a deeper connection with the places and the people.
Exactly. It's about making travel a force for good. Now, before we wrap up this part about responsible travel, I want to touch on safety. No matter where you go, it's important to be aware of your surroundings and take precautions.
That's so true, and something we should always keep in mind no matter where we're going. But how can we balance staying safe without letting fear kind of control our choices?
It's about being informed and prepared. Do your research before you go check travel advisories and just be aware of any potential risks. Once you're there, trust your instincts, stay in well-lit areas, especially at night, and try not to carry too much cash or flash expensive jewelry.
Great tips. And I think it's important to remember that while we should be aware of the risks, we shouldn't let fear hold us back from experiencing the world. There's a difference between being cautious and being paranoid, right?
Absolutely. Travel is about embracing the unknown, stepping outside our comfort zones, and connecting with the world. We shouldn't let fear stop us.
Well said. So we've covered a lot here, from practical tips to ethical considerations. We've talked about planning ahead, travel insurance, sustainable travel, and staying safe.
And remember, responsible travel isn't about being perfect. It's about making an effort to minimize our negative impact and maximize our positive contributions. Every little thing we do can make a difference.
Absolutely. So as we move on to the final part of our deep dive, let's keep all these things in mind as we explore what truly makes these destinations so special. As I've talked about the practical side of things and how to be responsible travelers, but now I'm ready to get back to those destinations. We've got this amazing list of places, each with its own unique appeal. What should our listeners be thinking about as they're exploring these places for themselves?
I think that's where the real fun starts. It's about going beyond the highlights and figuring out what speaks to you personally. We've given you a taste of each place, but now it's time for you to dig a little deeper.
Exactly. Thinking back to Medellin, it's amazing how they've used art and community initiatives to transform the city. If you had to choose just one thing to experience that spirit of renewal, what would it be?
For Medellin, I'd definitely recommend a walking tour of Comuna 13. Don't just see the murals, hear the stories of the people who lived through the tough times and helped create this transformation. It's really inspiring to see how resilient people can be.
That's a great idea. It's one thing to see the changes, but it's another to hear about it from the people who lived it. Now, I'm also really drawn to that idea of slow travel in the Scottish Highlands.
Hmm.
If someone only had a week, what would you suggest they do to capture that essence of slowing down and connecting with nature?
For a really immersive experience, I'd recommend hiking a section of the West Highland Way.
Okay.
It's this classic long-distance trail through some of the most beautiful scenery in the Highlands. Pick a section that fits your time frame, pack your tent, and spend a few days hiking, camping, and soaking up that tranquility.
Sounds amazing. The trail and the incredible scenery. Thinking about the Faroe Islands and their remote beauty,
Hmm.
is there one spot that really captures that feeling of being on the edge of the world?
Oh, there's this village called Saxon on the island of Streymoy.
Okay.
It's magical. Imagine this tiny village nestled at the end of a fjord with these towering cliffs all around and waterfalls cascading down. It's like something out of a fairy tale.
Wow, I can just picture the landscape, the village, that sense of isolation. Sounds like the perfect place to disconnect and just recharge. Okay, shifting gears to Slovenia. You mentioned Lake Bled and its fairy tale beauty, but also Slovenia's surprising diversity. How would you recommend someone experience both?
Well, I'd start with a few days at Lake Bled, just taking in the beauty and peacefulness. Rent a rowboat, visit the island in the middle of the lake, hike up to Bled Castle for those incredible views, then head over to the Socha Valley in the Julian Alps.
Okay.
It's amazing for hiking. You've got towering peaks, emerald green rivers, a totally different landscape, but equally stunning.
So you get the fairy tale and then the wilder side of Slovenia. Love it. And
Hmm.
for someone going to Botswana to see the wildlife, what's the one thing that really showcases the magic of the Okavango Delta?
Oh, for the ultimate Okavango Delta experience, go on a Makoro safari.
A Malkoro safari.
Yeah, imagine gliding silently through the waterways in a traditional dugout canoe surrounded by papyrus reeds and so much wildlife.
Yeah.
It's a truly unique way to experience this ecosystem.
Wow, a Mokoro safari. Peaceful, intimate, sounds amazing. And lastly, for those looking for both adventure and relaxation in the Azores, is there one activity that you think sums it all up?
To experience the best of the Azores, I'd say hike to the top of Mount Pico.
Okay.
It's the highest point in Portugal. It's a challenging hike, but the views from the top are breathtaking. And then to relax afterwards, soak in one of the natural hot springs on the island. The perfect combo of excitement and relaxation.
So conquer the mountain and reward yourself with a soak in a hot spring. I love it. We've talked about so much in this deep dive, but I
Yeah.
think you've really captured what makes each of these destinations so special. Any final thoughts for our listeners as they start dreaming about their travel plans for 2025?
Just remember that travel is all about discovery. Discovering new places, new cultures, even new parts of yourself. So be curious, be open to new things, and don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. There are so many incredible experiences out there just waiting for you.
Beautifully said. So go out there, explore, and embrace the adventure. Let this list be your starting point, and let your curiosity guide you. Happy travels, everyone.